All right, here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. If this happens to be your first time listening today, let me welcome you. Everyone else, what's up? How is everyone holding up? It certainly seems like events over the last week took a turn towards the dystopian. Seems like we're on the verge of World War III. There's just so many different reports of so many different horrible, tragic injustices and just dismay. It's too much for any of us to really take in. I found myself at some point just turning away. That was the only sensible option at some point, is to simply turn my eyes away from the screens. It's hard to do. It feels like you're putting your head in the sand and you want to be an aware citizen, and so much of our livelihoods and our ability to pay for things is tied to being on screens now. It just pulls at me. And I know what set me off. I got triggered today. I don't know if anybody listening to this saw this, but I saw an Instagram post today from Sting, the music icon Sting. And he's promoting it's a bunch of different things, but he's got a new 12-step wellness program. I believe it's called something like Free Spirits. And he's got like a couple of things. He's got like a Broadway musical that he's in coming out. He's got this 12-step wellness program and wellness center. And then he's got these two new music artists that he's promoting. He co-produced a song on their new album, and they're involved in this new wellness center, wellness program thing he's doing. And he talks about them in this way. He says, they're the first people who ever went through his program who've become truly free spirits. And now they're going to travel the world spreading this new wellness program so others can also become free spirits. And then they got this new song that he's on that's in another language, but it translates. The title of the song is Even Jesus Had a Bad Day. And the whole thing is really weird. Has anyone seen this? Sting does this almost 10-minute video where he talks about it and talks about how this secret center that he's had for many years, where he brought together all of these yogis and organic juice baristas to develop this program, and now he's releasing it to the world. And then there's all these reels of him and these two music artists wearing cream-colored clothing and doing mudras and staring off in a contemplative gaze. I mean, for me, if anybody was practicing yoga in New York in the mid-90s, Sting was this significant signpost. I remember there was a couple months where if you were practicing at Jivamukti on 2nd Avenue, you could turn over and look and Sting was in class. And then Madonna. I never had Madonna in class, but there was definitely one class I was in where I looked over, Sting was there and Willem Dafoe, right? Sting and Madonna and Willem Dafoe started coming to class. But then word got out, and then the classes were all sold out and you couldn't get into the classes that they were going to. But then I remember there was an interview that Sting did, and he talked about practicing yoga. And that was the moment when yoga went from being weird to being cool. And so I've just always remembered Sting as this kind of signpost for yoga, and seeing that social media post of him coming out, and he did this other thing. He talked about how all of these different things that have become parts of the wellness industry originated in his secret center. And he cited mindfulness, like mindfulness started in his... the whole thing really blew my mind, and it was very dystopian. And it just seemed like such a sign of our times where I couldn't even tell, is this real? Like, it could have been like an AI generated thing that someone had made and it wasn't real. But when I looked, it is actually a real thing. And so it's got me spinning a little bit. And I really feel like a need to get clarity and boundaries around what's happening online. And more specifically, the use of language models, AI chatbots and language models to generate content online. And it's been coming up in my teacher Sangha, specifically around some of the social media posts of my guest today, Lizzie Lasater. And Lizzie's been on the show before, and Lizzie and I have had a chance to kind of interact in my teacher Sangha some years ago. We talk about that. So I sort of know her some, and I've been following what she's been doing online, and in some ways really kind of impressed by it because it's an effective use of the social media, but also some part of me is concerned and finds myself getting kind of a little upset. So we came together to talk through it some, and I found this conversation to be totally for the moment and helped me get some clarity around it. So I was super happy to talk with Lizzie again, and it is my pleasure to be bringing it to you today. Real quick before we get to it, let me mention that if you are enjoying the show and you feel like you're getting something from it, perhaps you'll consider supporting it by becoming a podcast premium subscriber. There are no ads or sponsors on this show. I rely on listener support. And for as little as $5 a month, you can have a really big impact on helping contribute. Not to mention, you also get access to the full-length archives, which is an incredible resource. So please consider supporting the show and getting access to the archives by becoming a podcast premium subscriber. Also, if you want to connect with me in other ways, there's opportunities to do that. There's ongoing live classes and a weekly discussion group. There's a deep learning teacher training program, as well as on-demand continuing education videos. I got stuff. If you want to connect with me, Podcast Premium, and the rest, go to jbrownyoga.com. Okay, y'all. I will touch base with you on the other side, but let's get into it. Let's listen to this conversation I had with Lizzie Lasater. Hi.
Hi.
So cool to have a moment to see you again, to speak with you.
She's
Thank
here.
you for this. I'm recording. Let's consider ourselves having begun, okay?
Okay, I'm going to get my big mic, but I'm beginning. I'm ready to go.
All right, get the mic then. That's fine.
I think it might be a little bit nicer. I've got two rascals right outside that door. I'm solo parent. No, the door is locked. I'm solo parenting while Zooming. So,
hey,
but
listen,
you know.
Hey, listen, I'll say this to you. I can completely relate. I've been solo parenting too. It's a not great reason. My wife's been tending to her mom who's dying right now. And so I had to take care of the kids all solo last week. Mm-hmm. And she was going to come back this week, but she didn't come back. So it's another week, and I really wasn't expecting that. And I was sort of saying this to a friend yesterday that, you know, it's really a two-person operation that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. You just went out.
Now is it better?
Oh yeah, you got it. I got it back. Yeah. Minimum is what you said. Yes. It's true. And, you know, I was kind of stunned last week by just the extent of struggle to keep the kitchen clean and doing like all the dinners and then like cleaning the lunch containers and doing the lunches every day. I'm totally spent. And fortunately, my kids are in school right now, and I don't have them at the other side of the door, but I can completely relate. So not to worry, if you need to tend to anything, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Everything will be fine, no matter what happens. I'm a sincere believer in that. Even if something not fine happens, it will also.
It's true. Even if you're better off for taking that view.
Yeah. Whether
it's true or not. In the moment when you said it, it's definitely of benefit to take it.
Yes, I agree.
And I was thinking about you, getting ready to talk to you, and I was remembering in like, I guess it was 2018 or 2019, there was a couple months where you hung out at my teacher's Sangha.
I loved it.
And the reason I was thinking about that, because it connects to why we're talking today, is that at the time, I kind of had a sense that part of it was like you were doing some research. You were like, what are people doing out there? You know, like, how are people using Zoom meetings in a way that maybe is like good and helpful? And, you know, like, how are people using this technology that everybody was it was even before the pandemic. So it was more early days, let's say.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that you did that. And I was like, cool, very cool. And then more recently, I feel like it's sort of reversed where I've been doing all this like soul searching around like how much marketing has become a part of being a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always like that, or the marketing felt more innocent or whatever. We could talk about it today, but like it felt different when I was early, like making and marketing what I was doing. It felt very different than like in 2026, looking at social media. And I've been looking at you in the researching I've been doing and being like, ooh, see, if there's a way to potentially do it that's maybe effective and doesn't feel shitty, I feel like Lizzie's probably the person who's doing that right now. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I was like, some part of me doesn't like it. Like we could talk about it. I don't always like what's working in social media or even that I have to market myself. But if we're going to do it, it seems to me there would be a spirit in which we could do it. If I could let go of some of my limiting assumptions and whatnot that I have, I'm not sure I can, but if I could, there would be a way. And I really saw that you were doing that. And I would also say that the funny part about that, and that we could talk about this more too, is that there is a kind of edge, like a new edge from you that I wouldn't have necessarily associated with you in the past, but I get it from like a marketing standpoint, and it's honest. It's not just like trolling or something, but it was kind of like, it made me think, I hope you'll appreciate this in the spirit I intended. There's that one person on Instagram who got famous, Instagram famous for the like, I don't care anymore club for perimenopausal women. And I felt like you kind of did a little thing in there where you were like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I'm not going to be in the, what'd you write? Good Yogi Club anymore. And you started having some hot takes. And I've been kind of following that and I've been there for that. Let me just say, I'm on board. I'm there for your social media posts. And I've had a couple of conversations in that teacher's Sangha about one or two of them. So all of that's to say, I've been thinking about you some for that reason. I also, before we talk about some of that stuff, do want to kind of acknowledge that I saw the notifications about your mom's, I guess we would say, farewell tour.
No. That newsletter landed differently than I intended. What I'm communicating is that my mom, Judith Hanson Lasater, is turning 79 next month. And she lives and teaches in public. And this is the last time we're doing, for example, this live online mega restorative yoga year-long training that we started doing in the pandemic. We've been doing it every year. It's an incredible investment of time and energy. She shows up and delivers on a level which is shocking for a 79-year-old woman. But we've decided this is the last time she's going to do that much Zooming. We're charting a path where she steps back from the intensity. That's the word that I'm using. She will not quit teaching until she has to. She loves teaching. She loves connecting with students. She loves serving. She's so dedicated. She loves her practice. So like, as long as people keep inviting her, but I have this conflict, which you will understand. You know, you spoke about your wife and her aging parents, is that I have a conflict between, as my mom's business partner in our online world, which we're growing in the community at Lasater.yoga, like I want her to teach forever because she, like it's fabulous. Students love her and she is still really capable of showing up and there's a Dharma transmission, 100%. As her daughter, I want to protect her that she doesn't keep teaching beyond a point where it makes sense cognitively and where she works herself into the ground and she doesn't enjoy the last years, which, as we know, the challenge is we don't know how long we have and we don't know the state of health we're going to be in, mental and physical. So I'm trying to help her with dignity and grace to begin to step back when she's at her strongest. She also internally has been saying to us kids, she used to say she was going to stop teaching at 70. And then she got to 70 and she was like, well, this is still fun, and then she's been saying, I'm going to stop teaching at 80. And I just don't see that happening unless we really start to put some guardrails. And she has been doing that. She taught in London for 20 years and she's not going there anymore. And she taught at Yellow Springs for 20 years. She's not going. So she's trying to reduce these kind of yearly travel commitments and these yearly big workshops. Although I will say, I just saw something pop up on, she is still a grown up who has an email account. And
you can't control her, I'm sure.
No, I just saw a workshop for next year in Boston pop up on her calendar. And I was like, what is this? And she was like, oh yeah, well, they invited me and I really want to go. I want to visit my friend Carol who lives near there. I was just like, okay,
Yeah.
So it's going to be a human process.
I get it. And I appreciate the clarification. That's why I was kind of hesitating because I wasn't entirely clear what it meant. But I also sort of just appreciate because sometimes it feels like in the past, sort of senior teachers, at some point they sort of stop and then you find out about it later. So I feel like it's really in the spirit of your mom's teaching for you all to be kind of like working through what you just described in public, because she's been doing that as sort of I have and you have.
Absolutely. And it's really like me rattling the cowbells, frankly, and saying last call. If you want, no, really, just
I have a friend who already signed up for the feathered pipe. I was like, she's like, should I? I was like, yes, you should.
Yes, you should. Because I got an email today from someone saying, oh, I'm considering doing her online training and your online training that starts in March for restorative yoga, or she's doing, I think in June or July in San Francisco in person. What should I do? And I mean, it's against my self-interest. I want her to sign up for my training, but I was like, go see her in person. Do it. Just, and because she is still amazing, capable, powerful, and a really gifted teacher. But yeah, exactly. It's just last call. It's don't think you're going to do this in 5 or 10 years because that's not clear it will be happening.
Well, I also just really reflect on how much myself realize how much it really does take out of a person to show up to teach. Set aside whatever, less people talk about lesson planning or whatever else we're doing, admin or whatever, just the actual energy to show up in the ways that your mom's modeled for a lot of us and that a lot of us have looked to emulate. Because a lot of that, when it's not about big poses, it becomes about other subtler exchanges. And that requires a certain energy expenditure that's not always so easy to kind of quantify or even articulate, but it requires like a lot of rest and like ritual in your life to support it, like lifestyle to support it. And I have definitely, like, I'm 53 and I'm thinking, can I keep doing this for another 20 years?
Absolutely. And she models that so well. And that's what people don't see. It's like if she flies somewhere to teach a week-long workshop and has 80 people, first of all, she wrangles 10 assistants to come help her, which is amazing. And is it in its you, so many of your listeners are teachers. I know it's like, it's wonderful to have that support, but it's also like a whole secondary project to wrangle the assistants. You know what I mean? Like all that stuff.
So there's administrative things involved when you have groups of people that you have to manage.
Exactly. And then she also has, but what she does, which has modeled for me, and I'm, as you're saying, like I'm starting to realize how intelligent her system is. As I'm getting older, it's like she used to fly the day before. Now she flies at least 2 days before. She gives herself down days when she arrives. She asks the studio to bring props. I always thought it was like, oh, she's such a diva, but it's like she asked this, she asked with nonviolent communication, with all love and care and respect, would you please bring, have these props at my hotel room? And would you do one grocery run for me? I need, a whole milk organic cottage cheese. Like it's the things that she knows. And I used to always think like, oh, it's just mom being so, demanding. But honestly, now I see it from the other side as I travel and teach, and I see it's like when she wakes up, she has everything she needs to do her practice, to feed herself the way to be able to show up for those 80 people. And like I just last weekend was in the Netherlands teaching in Utrecht at this wonderful studio, Yoga Moves, that I love. And the studio owner who I stay with, and she takes wonderful care of me, she was like laughing at me because I flew from Salzburg up to Amsterdam and I brought with me my mix, my oats and flax seeds and sesame seed, like my little overnight oat mix in a Ziploc. And she was laughing at me. She's like, we have all those things here. You could go to the grocery store and get them. I was like, yes, but I'm not going to. Like, I'm going to just pour this in your kitchen and overnight. And then I know when I wake up, I'm going to eat that. And that is what I want. Cause I have to wake up tomorrow. I didn't give myself a rest day. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to show up and I have 40 people and I have to be on all day. And so I slowly learning.
I get it. Those are the little rituals that you put in place to manage it because you just got in like a steel tube and propelled yourself through time, space to like another place on the planet. And then like now you're in a different time zone. And then you're meeting a whole big group of people who you've never met before, who are all looking at you to give them some kind of like peak experience or something. And you're going to give them some subtle, like delayed gratification kind of pointing thing instead of what I'm saying? So all of that is you having that. I did the same thing. I had breakfast in little baggies in the same way that you did so that you have a certain consistency, you have consistent rituals amidst all these fluctuating things you don't have any control over.
Yeah.
That's kind of a yoga thing right there, isn't it? That's sort of a developing of a personal practice and kind of maintaining that in terms of like a teaching practice and having those things around you that create the conditions that you need to, like you said, do the practice and the teaching that you're doing.
Well, and it's something that mom has said before, and I'm slowly starting to glimpse it. I felt it this past week in teaching. I wonder if you know this, Jay, is I'm more and more feeling like my job is when I teach, I'm not so focused on the outline and the material, although I always have my notes and I'm prepared, but it's really about the day, the week, the month, the lifetime ahead of that moment that I get my container ready. So it's like I get up and I go for my walk. I have my breakfast. I do my practice. And so that when I show up with the students in a funny way, I want to be empty.
Right.
And
I get
mom calls it tuning the instrument.
I get it completely. Like most of the work is done in this sort of preparation, which is just you kind of doing the things that you need to do in your life or whatever. Like you said, have the breakfast that you need so that you can show up and allow for an improvisatory space. because there are times where you're like delivering material that you've prepared or things that you've said before, and you're going to utilize that stuff again and again. You know, we've seen that, the repetition of certain even phrases and things that you say, but then there's all this other space where all the things that you didn't plan for it to happen. And as you teach more and more, you recognize that's where all the best stuff happens. And the more I can maximize that time with people, the better.
Exactly. The more present, actually, in a funny way, the more present I can be with them, the material, what they think they're coming for, the name of the workshop becomes less foreground. It's like, that's the back of the core. We're going to get to this. These are the poses I want to teach. This is the stuff. But it's like much more about the quality of energy and presence that I can bring into the room.
Well, I get it. You see, that actually circles a little bit back to where I started today about marketing, because the title and the descriptions to get people to show up, and then, you know, the whatever it is, give them whatever percentage of what they want, so you can give them whatever percentage of what you're hoping to offer or what you think they need. You know, like the percentages are sometimes 90, 10 or whatever. I guess for me, it kind of brings me to sort of this recent social media thing that you've been doing that I've sort of been admiring and also dreading in certain ways, not personal to you, just to the way the world is, but like one of them just I'm in total agreement with, which was you're teaching Shavasana wrong, which was basically like, having people lie in Shavasana with no props and feel uncomfortable for 5 minutes actually isn't a very effective way to practice Shavasana. And I definitely agree with that. And I would say that my personal practice right now, I don't consider it a confession, but I'm happy to share it. My personal practice these days is almost entirely restorative yoga. It's just supported Shavasana most of the time. I would say 85% of the time. That is my personal practice, because I just, with the teaching load and parenting load and everything else, I do some stuff while I'm teaching. I don't demonstrate everything, definitely not. A lot of times I teach from chairs these days myself, but my personal practice, that's what all I need is that. And I always do it supported. And I try to encourage people to use props whenever they have them. So I guess, did you get a lot of people upset with you when you did that? And is that part of it? Like, do you have that in mind? Are you being provocative to try to, like, at least, because it's so hard to grab attention? Or is it just, I guess I'm curious of the generation of some of these posts and what sort of your process has been in like generating the social media content that you're generating.
I mean, I love talking about this. So I have so many thoughts. I don't think about being provocative. That's not my primary motivator, but I am becoming more willing to be declarative. Mm-hmm. And I'm very clear that I'm talking about my opinion, my first person experience. And I have this new framing about what I'm doing, which is cultivating a community of yogis who want to practice and teach from our own embodied experience instead of inherited patriarchal rules. So when I articulated that for myself, that had been brewing for years, decades, we could say, through mom. But when I look at it through that lens, then I feel really empowered to speak openly and declaratively about my own embodied experience.
Okay, I get that. Like some kind of guiding purpose behind it gives it meaning that doesn't just feel like trying to get likes or whatever.
And I'm very willing, and this is new, maybe that you're feeling this. I'm very willing now, as I was growing in the beginning and a younger, newer teacher, I just like wanted more followers and just more, I wanted likes and like, just yes, like let's just have a big yummy yes feeling everywhere. Right. Mm-hmm. And now I'm becoming more willing to say, you're welcome to unfollow me. Like, maybe it's not for you. Like, please unsubscribe. Like, I want to do a very specific thing. And I'm not saying that's for everyone.
Well, I suppose going back to the stated purpose that you just gave us, and the other one that I mentioned, the Shavasana one, because I'm in agreement with the post in terms of like, I think it's better to have like a bolster underneath your knees when you're in Shavasana, but I'm not clear on why people not using bolsters is because of patriarchal rules, or is that a separate kind of thing?
No, I think they're connected. Absolutely. I mean, here's how I would thread them together. I would say that many of us grew up in lineages where that's what we were taught. It came from a specific place, which I completely honor. These practices came through, for me, the Krishnamacharya tradition. My mom studied directly with BKS Iyengar, Krishnamacharya. And if you're practicing Ashtanga yoga or anything that's like flow yoga, most things that people call Hatha yoga, that comes from the Krishna. You know this. I'm saying this for our listener. It comes through the Krishnamacharya tradition. And so in a lot of those rooms, what we've inherited is that Shavasana is lying down on the floor with no props. And there's a certain macho ethos about props. Now, the Iyengars were very clear about props, but other systems did not have that, do not have that embedded in them. Anything that comes from the Patabi Joy side of things, for example, there is often a spoken or unspoken degradation of props. And even I've had in classes by very classically trained Iyengar teachers, even though we think of them as being very invested in props, there can be, I've had teachers say to me like, oh, that's Lizzie. She always just makes herself so comfortable in Shavasana. Like, oh, there she is taking, like, oh, she's so indulgent. Like she's putting whipped cream on her coffee, and so it's like, there's a sense that we're supposed to suffer or that suffering is an important part of the practice. And I don't know if patriarchal is too jangly of a word. We could probably find a word that would feel differently there. But what I like about that word is I'm taking a stand. And if you don't agree, if you're not interested in that conversation, then you're going to read that at the top of my Instagram profile and you're not going to follow me, which is fabulous. Like, I don't need you to follow me. I've reached a certain, I think just from doing this for 10 years. Online, Lasater.yoga, I've been producing online educational programs, courses, Zoom events, monthly mentorship for yoga teachers. I mean, this office hours that we do with mom, it's like monthly calls for yoga teachers. We're on call number 119. Like 119 months in a row. So it's like, I'm in a place where I am, I have more clarity about who I want to serve.
Well, I appreciate the nuance in terms of the use of the word, and I get it. I was definitely one of those people who was taught, certainly was modeled, like I don't need props. That was somehow a crutch of sorts. And I remember saying, oh, they're crutches, like you would use them if you need them, but at some point, if you were really advanced, you wouldn't need them. And then I mentioned, my practice of Shavasana supported. There was a specific moment, and I always say this to people, where I was like, I don't need them. And then like a teacher just came over and just like kind of didn't ask me, but which I guess is sort of not what we would do these days, but like just put a bolster underneath my knees and like something underneath my head and like covered me. And I couldn't deny how much better it felt. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, this feels so much better. And it spurred this whole series of questions in me. I was like, well, why wouldn't I do this for myself? Why wouldn't I show myself this same lovely consideration that someone else just showed me? So it's become a whole thing. So I get it. I actually get what you're saying, even in terms of the Krishnamacharya tradition, which definitely gets romanticized, but there was harsh, like the reason some of the teachers your mom's peers were modeling teachers that they met who are teaching in certain ways. And a lot of us newer generation teachers who want to maintain authenticity, we've still had to like really question things in new ways. And so I get what you're saying. And again, in terms of like putting something on a social media post that's going to actually at least spur conversations, I think I've done that recklessly in the past, but I think that you can do it in a way that's not so reckless. And in the way that you're describing where, okay, well, you can either like challenge me and we'll have a little dialogue about that, and then maybe we'll be friends, or you can leave and it'll be fine. I'm with you on that. I get that. I've kind of come to that place too where, okay, at this point, I'm definitely not trying to grow to the masses audiences, because putting all this effort into trying to get big doesn't work. And
No.
it becomes this just trying to get bigger. And that, what you said, oh, I want to develop a community, means, oh, I'm just going to be clear about what I'm doing and what I'm interested in. And then hopefully some people are going to gravitate around that. And that feels like an organic, honest way to try to be out there,
Yes. And I want to serve the students who are here. And I want to be intentional as I continue to, I don't even want to say grow my business, but like flower my business, that it's not just about growth. It's not just about more for more sake, because that is not sustainable for my nervous system. Mm-hmm. Right. So how can
trying to scale up is not necessarily good at all.
Like when I'm in a place where I can pay my rent and I can go to the farmer's market and buy organic food. Like I can just, like I can buy organic avocados from the grocery store because I want them. Like I don't have to debate myself. Am I going to buy avocados this week? Right. Which you and I probably both, I definitely had starving artist years where I didn't buy the organic avocados. I didn't even buy avocados because I was more stressed about money. So I'm at a place now where I can meet those basic needs, and I can buy a season pass to go skiing. We live in the Alps, like the basics are covered. What is it more that I want? Do I want to just work and never see my kids? I have 2 6-year-old boys. Or do I want to, these people, like the yoga studio owner who doesn't have time to practice.
Yeah.
Been there. Yeah. Do I want to, what's the life that I want to work myself into? But in terms of social media, some of it is just mechanics about, if I start a reel by saying you're teaching Shavasana wrong, we know we have 1 second to grab someone's attention. That's different than it's the medium is the message. On an Instagram reel, I need to say the first thing needs to be spiky to catch you. If I say as the first thing, as a yoga teacher, I've been teaching.
Yeah, see, in the old days, we'd be like, hi, I'm Jay, and I'm lading a thing, and that you can still, people do that, but that's like 10 years ago or whatever.
But you just think about when you make your bone broth. I make bone broth once a week in the winter. I buy an organic chicken carcass from the farmer's market and I cook it down. And you can cook the bone broth for 2 hours and you can have 2 liters of broth. Or you can cook it for 15 hours and then you're going to have this little gelatinous, cartilagey, full, really, really rich broth. And you'll only have maybe 400 milliliters of broth, right? So I just think that the Instagram reels are the 400 milliliters of broth. You still have the same nourishment. It's possible to still have the same content. You just distill it down. And that happens to be, I would say, I am quite lucky in this era because that's how my brain works. I'm an essentialist. I see things anyway in this shortened form. I'm able to distill things down to the essential of what I want to communicate. I always had the problem in school that they would assign a certain number of pages for the essays and I could never get there. I couldn't get, I was like, well, I wrote 2 pages. It's supposed to be 5 pages, but I wrote 2 pages. I already said everything I want to say. I can't make it 5 pages.
Well, I get it. That tendency in you is serving you well in this moment because you're absolutely right. What's effective. And I even was saying this, my daughter, she's 16. So my wife and I were just kind of watching over her shoulder and she was giving us permission to sort of look at like what she sees in her like Instagram and TikTok reels. And we were kind of stunned. There's like a certain style of the way that those reels are put together, even the way that like when someone's doing a rant into the mic, they're not just like talking into the mic like we always have. They're like doing their makeup while they're talking into the mic, you know, like, and it's sort of like, I saw a yoga person who was like pouring his coffee and he's just like looking over his shoulder at his kitchen, doing a rant while pouring his coffee. And it's, to me, I have mixed feelings because I have like an acting background. So I know that they're not like actually just waking up in the morning and like doing their makeup or making their coffee. That's all carefully thought out and sort of scripted and put together. And again, I admire the art. Like like you're saying, I can see that it's social, making content or whatever we're going to call it. It's different than teaching a yoga class, but it might be helpful to be a yoga teacher to do it. I don't know. But like making that kind of content is a sort of specific style or things, the way that the algorithms work. That's new. That's the new thing that I feel like a Luddite with, because I feel like my generation was first internet and now there's this new thing. And I'm like, oh, I don't even know if I could do that thing or I want to do that thing. But you're kind of finding a way into what's going on, you know, in a way that...
Do you want me to give you a 3-minute masterclass cheat sheet of how I think you could do it super well?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I have this mentorship program called Start Before You're Ready. We talk about stuff like this in there. It's for yoga teachers and studio owners. It's a 10-week program. You can find, if you just look at lasater.yoga, Start Before You're Ready, you'll find it. There's also a free newsletter. There's a bunch of stuff on YouTube, on my Lizzie Lasater YouTube. So, okay, I just made a reel a couple hours ago. This is literally the process that I went through to make the reel. I did Viparita Karani, legs up the wall for 12 minutes. Okay, step one.
Viparita Karani, duly noted.
Viparita Karani, put yourself in a state of flow. So if it's, you want to go for a walk, if you want to do your practice, if you want to meditate, like I was genuinely craving Viparita Karani. I wasn't even thinking about making a reel. I just had some space in my afternoon after lunch before I had our somatic strength Zoom class this afternoon. So I'm doing Viparita Karani and I get this phrase in my head. I'm a yoga teacher, but I never have time to practice Shavasana. And that is something that someone said. We did a free class called Shavasana is My Love Language. And somebody said that in the chat. And it's been poking me since then for about 2 weeks. So that phrase comes into my head. And then I just kind of, instead of swiping it away and being like, I'm doing yoga, I'm not supposed to be thinking, I just kind of gently, like it's a balloon, you know, I just kind of let myself spend maybe, I don't know, because you're not timing it, but a couple minutes as I'm in the pose, just bouncing this balloon in the air of like, oh, that phrase. Oh, what could that, what is that? How does that make me feel? What could I? And then I get a flash. And today it came to me during the pose. Often what I'll do is set a timer when I come down for 10 additional minutes and I journal by hand for 10 minutes. That's my process. Just free writing practice, Natalie Goldberg, writing down the bones style. And then what comes out of that writing practice today, what came out is, I'll read it to you. It's short. It's a reel. I'm a yoga teacher, but I never have time to practice Shavasana. When I teach Shavasana, I like to talk the entire time so my students never get bored and never have to be alone in silence. I definitely don't teach them how to use props. If they're uncomfortable on a hard floor, that just builds grit. And blankets, bolsters, support, no, real yogis love to suffer. I also keep Shavasana short, like 3 minutes, because we're busy. Breathing deeply, too risky. Let's keep it shallow and productive, because obviously the goal of yoga is to optimize, not to rest. So that comes out, all out of that first sentence. I'm a yoga teacher, but I never have time to practice. And what I also would do is open up Claude, which is my favorite AI right now, and say, hey, Claude, I'm writing a reel. I have this sentence. I'm a yoga teacher, but I never have time to practice Shavasana. I want to be satire. Things like props. I don't need props. I want people to suffer. Yoga's about optimizing. Give me 10 sentences that would be along this line. That's another way you could go. And then and then you say, oh, okay, I want sentence 1, sentence 4, sentence 8, sentence 10. Then it writes it out for you. Now, in terms of filming it, I just put my camera, I use my iPhone, and I put the camera, I have a ring light with a little, I can show it to you. I have a ring light with a little holder for my iPhone. So then I just go somewhere in my studio where I want to see it. I have this little here. It's like a little hooky thing. And then I just go somewhere in my studio where I want to, kind of figure out what background. And then I sat down and I just say those words into the camera like 3 times each sentence. Just 3. You have the acting background. Just say each time, like, say the sentence like, I'm a yoga teacher, but I never have time to practice Shavasana. And then you could say, I'm a yoga teacher, but I never have time to practice. You could try to say it 3 different ways. And and then I just quickly cut it together. I like Veed, VEED is an online website where you can edit things really easily. But the point is, what I've discovered also is that when I'm talking to the camera to make something like that, instead of thinking like I'm on stage, I'm speaking about yoga for Instagram, which happens to me also when I get nervous. I usually go into my kind of a bigger voice, is to remind myself to be smaller, to be more one-to-one, to lower my voice volume, to be more like I'm sending a voice note to a friend. Because we have to remember, like I always say to people, you're not on stage, you're on the toilet. Like when someone is scrolling on Instagram, that's where they're not.
That's it. You just nailed it. That last bit there in terms of like whispering to it's just like someone you're whispering into somebody's ear. A lot of times they're like kind of trying to be quiet because they don't want to be disturbing, or they're like on their phone or whatever. You're right. Wow, that's really interesting to hear that process. Thank you for sharing that. I know a lot of people are going to be intrigued by that. Even the AI part, which we can get to, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. But before we get to the AI, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about one of your other very controversial posts, because this is the one that became the big conversation in the Teacher Sangha, which was the Yin Yoga post. And, what I would say is I don't have a lot of interest in debating the anatomy, and I know Bernie did his thing, and you guys had your back and forth, and people can go read all that. I will say there is a question that I think you're pointing to, and maybe it was because of the provocative nature of the way social media posts are these days that gets lost. I don't know. But I think that the interesting conversation for me is around like long holds and what we think they're doing to our bodies while we're in long holds, and when long holds might be good and when long holds might not be good. But I guess how AI generated was that post? I mean, where did that come from for you? What prompted you? Because you did call it out in a way that was very like, tell all your friends who do yin yoga, they're destroying their joints, their proprioception is dying, or whatever it was. So please tell me what about that post. Where did that one come from?
Okay, I'm just pulling it up. It's on my Instagram from last year. Yeah. And it's a swipe. And the first one says, another unpopular yoga fact. Here's why I don't practice yin yoga anymore. So that was prompted by, I was doing a Zoom class with our brilliant teacher, Mary Richards, who's our resident anatomy nerd at Lasater.yoga and a brilliant teacher. And she kind of offhandedly mentioned why long holds are not healthy for the Golgi tendon organs, science. And my brain just hears hashtag science, right? So like, I don't know exactly what she's talking about, but she kind of mentioned something in a class. And then I really that tickled me. And I thought, oh, super interesting. What does she mean by that? And then I did a bit of research. I circled back and asked her. And that post, actually, I did write with AI in terms of, I I gave it the transcript of that class. I was out for a walk, and then I pulled up that chat that had the transcript of the class, and I said, I want to make a Instagram swipe. Help me. And this is what I want to say. And then I spoke as I would speak to you. Here's why I don't practice yin yoga anymore. I used to believe what I was taught. I thought it was good for my fascia. That's what I've always heard. But I've recently learned that that doesn't match anatomical reality. And then I said, what's the science behind this? Read the caption. And then I just put in the caption what Mary Richards was teaching, has been teaching us, is telling me what makes a lot of sense. And it went crazy. It was like one of my most popular posts last year, which is so interesting because popularity now includes outrage. So yes. There's 1,300 likes and there's so many comments. Let me look at how many comments. And the thing that I think that 272 comments, I think the kind of, I don't want to say standard, it sounds pejorative, but like the normal user of Instagram maybe doesn't realize that when you comment on something, especially if you comment on something you don't like, you are signaling to the algorithm that it should show that post to more people. So exactly. And we saw that in the 2026 election.
I learned this, and I've said it before, like at a certain point I realized that there was a lot of popularity of the show that was people who did not like me, who were upset with me. And if I said things to upset them more, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that exactly. And the algorithms push it.
Yes.
And the AI is generating things to help you with it.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, so in terms
of... So what I want to say is, and in terms of the scale, I mean, this is the other thing, circling back, is like, how do I want to flower my business in the future? There is... this one-to-many communication does become untenable. When there's 274 comments on a post, like I didn't read them all. I didn't reply to them all. I'm not absorbing all of that. There is a certain scale at which things get out of control, like out of human like scale. So in a sense, like, yeah, that was kind of up. It says when I look up my insights on the post, it's reached almost 200,000 views. So
well, here, let me ask you a quick question. If you were in a room full of people and some of them were yin yoga teachers, and you wanted to talk to them about this idea that Mary Richards had talked about, or you wanted to talk to them about why you think holding poses for a really long time might not be a good thing, you probably wouldn't have done it in the way that it was in that post, though, right?
Right. No, right. The thing which was lost, which I found interesting, I think people got so triggered because there's such an identity, which I understand. If I'm a yin yoga teacher, I'm so identified with that style that what the nuance that was lost is that the entire post is couched in the first person. Like,
well, you said that at the beginning, and you absolutely say that. It's, I don't practice anymore. But you do say, like, tell your friends who are into yin.
It says at the bottom.
But that's the AI part. It just does that stuff because that's the kind of stuff that gets people riled and gets it to be more popular. That's why you have 200,000 hits on that one. And again, I'm not passing a judgment. Like, I think, as I said at the beginning, it's effective. It works. You got a lot more eyes on what you're doing.
But let me just jump in and say, yes, but again, with a sense of elegance, I literally said, send this post to someone who loves yin yoga, but might be served by learning the science behind holding poses a bit shorter. That's not aggressive. That's not like, so they can stop ever doing holding poses shorter. I'm saying, like, it's the length. There's a myth that it's good for your fascia to hold the poses really long. And the reason for me as well, couched in the first person, is like, I tend towards hyperextension and hypermobility. So in this phase of my life, which I also say in that post, I think in this phase of my life, I'm doubling down on strength and I'm doubling down on restorative. But like the long holds of stretches, I have slowly realized do not serve the body that I'm in. I
again, substantively, I am in complete agreement. Like our practices are in parallel. So like the substance of what you just said, where it's like my personal practice, as I said earlier, is restorative, is, supported Shavasana. And yes, I'm doing some strength training because it's helpful to me. So I'm kind of on the same page with you there. I guess what's interesting to me, and it does kind of come to this whole AI question, because I know you've been out there, and I actually broke from my own personal protocol. I have not posted a comment on a social media post in at least almost 10 years, but I actually posted one on one of yours, on one of your AI ones. And maybe you didn't know it was there because you can't read them all. But here's what I would say is, I felt like a knee-jerk reaction, and then I had a whole process, and I did the thing you're not supposed to do. I posted before I had a chance to think about it even, but I really do have some pretty big questions about it, because even in the way that you described the way that you've been using AI, and I know other people who are using that too, and my daughter is using it a lot, and the teachers are like monitoring their type stroke so they can see if they're using it. I'm very aware of it. I am not using it, full disclosure, by choice. And I guess I would say that the kind of question for me is twofold. One is, there is a question of like, is it helping you do something, or is it doing something for you? And there is a gray area there. And I guess it also has to do with what I feel is a certain point at which the use of this particular technology actually serves to take a certain amount of agency away from people. So in the first case, in the examples that you gave us, like you using the language model, it's just the way I prefer to refer to it because it's much more accurate, it is shaping what your content. Like you're giving it a prompt, and it's giving you some stuff, and then you're choosing. So you're certainly like collaborating with it, but in the same way that I would collaborate with another person, and I would bounce off of it, and I would get input from that person, and there'd be a collaboration. It didn't all just come from me staring out the window and writing on my pad, like you were talking about before. You took what you did, which was still work. You brought yourself to a place, you did some Viparita Karani, you got yourself into a space, you did the thing, you did a whole vision, you did the thing, you created something, which I appreciate. And then you took that and you went to Claude and you said, okay, Claude, can you help me make this into a social media post?
Okay, so here's my question. I think it's a very nuanced and intelligent question you're asking. So how is that different than if I hired a copy editor and I sent her a WhatsApp voice note that was exactly the same as the prompt?
Well, I mean, the first answer to that is the copy editor is a human being.
What?
And the language model is not. So there's going to automatically be a relationship and an exchange there that is a human relationship, not a relationship between a human being and a technology, which kind of maybe brings me to the other thing, although that could be jumping ahead, which is you introduced this kind of like AI anatomy bot, which is what prompted that like comment from me. And this is like, on one hand, I kind of felt like, this is what I've been talking about with my daughter. Like if I wanted to find out something about anatomy and I go to the olden Google and I ask a question, it would give me a list of links, of sources, of places I would go, and hopefully there would be some discernment in the process. There'd be more than one option. There would often be pages upon pages, but they stopped doing that. But now when you go to the Google machine and you ask a question, the AI bot at the top gives you an answer, a compiled answer. And sometimes it has sources to click on and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes if you ask it to explain where it got its sources from, you'll see, oh, I don't really like those sources. But like not everybody does that. People just take that top answer. And in the same way that I've talked about, like when I first moved here, and for the first year, I used my GPS. And then one day my phone started to run out and I got panicked because I didn't know how to get home, even though I was within 1 square mile of where I lived. So I literally had to make myself not use the GPS for another year so I could learn the streets of my own neighborhood. I worry that there's a fine line between using these language models to help us learn things and also having the language models replace a certain amount of learning.
Okay. Valid points. I created your anatomy nerd friend and tutor inside of our experiential anatomy course for the professional track. We had a foundations track and a professional track that we ran last fall. As an experiment, I was very open, like I'm playing with this. What I did is I created a chatbot, and what I trained her on, we called her Emmy. What I trained her on were the relevant books that Mom has published out of the 11 books on yoga that she's published, the relevant books like Yoga Body. And I trained her on the transcripts of the 10 years of courses that we've already made and shared. So, those are hundreds of thousands of words. And what I conceived of her as is Mary Richards, who I mentioned before, was personally answering every question on our message board from a cohort of students, hundreds of students in the class. And she was personally answering one-to-one, which is an incredibly inefficient system because she's writing these long answers. That one student is getting something from it, but nobody across the cohort was reading what other people were asking. And she was investing an enormous amount of time that wasn't feeding her or serving her to do these questions. So my dream was that we would be able to train this Emmy bot, because one issue we have, Mom has another book called Yoga Myths. A lot of what we teach is myth busting, where we're explicitly saying we are teaching you something different than is what the predominant view in the yoga world or what other people are teaching. And let us tell you why based on anatomical reality. Mom is a physical therapist. So the problem is when our students Google or look in other places for the answers, there is so much out there of other, very simple example, in dog pose, we teach to slightly rotate the hands in as opposed to turn them out.
Oh, blasphemy.
But if you ask generic ChatGPT what to do, you have a good chance of getting rotated out, right? So that confuses our students. So I wanted to make like a circle in this environment. She's going to answer based on not what's right, but what we're teaching. So that as you're going through the course, you can ask. And the other thing, Jay, is that we have a ton of non-native English speakers. And so I got really excited about the prospect of our students being able to talk to Emmy in German. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's for me, the future of education is that ability to have hyper personalized tutoring where I can ask questions. And that is one of the number one feedbacks we get from our students is like, they want more Q&A time. They want more access to our teachers and ability to just ask questions. Where's the balance between our time, our nervous systems, our practice, us being humans and not just on Zoom 24 hours a day? So that's where that Emmy bot came from. And I was honestly surprised. I was naive. I was seeing it as like, this is a learning tool. This is a way that makes those hundreds of thousands of words essentially searchable so that Mom and Mary don't have to repeat themselves as much. Like I thought everyone was going to just say, hoorah. And then like what you're saying, I was communicating it on our newsletter and in our community. And then as I saw that it started to be a little bit controversial, you're right. I did lean in and then say like, I'm going to make a social media post about this because people seem quite jazzed about it. Positive and negative. And what I do notice, and I wonder if we were teaching in a different subject matter, if it wasn't yoga, if I was teaching, I don't know, what would be a non-controversial subject? If I was teaching math, I'm not sure that the community would get so exercised about saying, I've embedded a math tutor chatbot in the back end of the course.
I think that there's a point there. I know like in the chess world and like in other worlds, like the uses of these technologies have come into play. And I appreciate all that clarification about what you're doing with it. And again, like if it's clear of like, oh, where the sources are from, then I can see it as a learning tool or like a research tool. But, you know, if Emmybot's not saying, oh, this idea comes from this book that Judith Hanson Lasater really likes to read, and this comes from her book. Like if the sources aren't cited over time, and you don't really know all the answers unless you're looking at them that this bot's going to be giving people, you're trusting that this language model is going to give answers that are in the spirit of all the data that you fed it.
No, and we got it wrong.
They do quote unquote hallucinate. There's all these instances of like lawyers using it and then getting in trouble because it cited cases that weren't even there. So
we got screenshots of stuff. But we have no oversight of what's in the chats. I was super transparent. Like I'm a early adopter. I'm experimenting. This is fun for me. Let's try it out. I told the students as well. We sold it as like it's 6 months limited act. Like after 6 months, this version of Emmy is going away. Like I also am learning in public.
I so appreciate that.
We got screenshots of people being like, oh, she said this doesn't seem right. So I blushed many times.
Yeah. Well, that's an important admission. I will also tell you the thing that set me off is none of that. The thing that I find sort of uncomfortable, and again, it's not personal to you at all. It's more like the way the world is right now, that like that you gave it a name, and there was even kind of like a picture of like, here's your Emmybot. Like to me, that actually feels like a weird line where we're personalizing these language models. And there's even instances of like, I mean, I'm sorry to cite these extremes, but like kids like committing suicide after interacting with these language models in a personal way, as though they're other humans or beings as opposed to language models. So the idea that we're not presenting it as like, here's a really useful tool for us to not have to do a bunch of email templates. I get it. I don't have the like same scale as you and your mom, but people ask me a lot of the same questions, and I've got cut and paste email templates that I then personalize. I get it. I get the kind of the pragmatic usefulness of the tool.
No, and where you're right, Jay, I hear that. And where you're right is I was genuinely surprised. Some of the feedback we got, people would say, I asked X question and then like she gave me a wacky answer. And I was thinking, why are you asking X question? That is so far outside of the scope of this course. Like that's not, like they were asking, I didn't hear life questions, but they were asking like, help me write a sequence for a class on osteoporosis. It was like, this class did not mention osteoporosis. Like that's not. Like,
it's not trained to do that for you, is it?
Exactly. And so, of course, that is a Pandora's box. We don't know how people are interacting. I mean, what I would love to ask you, because it's just kind of give you some empathy and dig down. What is, when you see a human-like machine, you feel uncomfortable, you feel scared because of your need for authenticity? What's the core of it?
No, I'm not scared by the technology. I'm very tech savvy in many regards. I actually see it in a much broader kind of almost spiritual view. I really do think that the technological direction that our society is going in is not a healthy direction. I almost see it as biblical. It's like a Tower of Babel. We're like basically trying to turn ourselves into gods. We're literally, if you look at what the founders of these technologies are saying, they're not saying the same. They're not talking about it like pragmatic tools like we are. They're talking about how much it's going to replace. They're talking about how much it's going to drastically change our society. Sometimes they're talking about demons and disembodied entities and freaking head of Palantirs out there giving talks on Antichrist. I mean, there's some weird stuff attached to it. So for me, there's kind of like, even on like an artist level, like as a writer, I get how useful it could be. I've got massive archives of audio that I could be analyzing and putting together a new product around that in a similar way that you have. And believe me, I'm still considering doing it. I'm not taking it off the table entirely, but I'm not doing it because some part of me doesn't want to contribute to the direction that it's going in. I'm not saying I can stop it. I'm not saying, everybody's like, it's inevitable, so we have to embrace it. And I think you can make the case. That's kind of the case that you've made. Like, we can't put our heads in the sand. This is the technology. We can't be stupid. We can utilize it in smarter ways. Let's make conscious choices around it. I agree. If we're going to use it, let's set some boundaries around it, maybe. But for me personally, it's a deep question. I don't really think that the use of these AI agents is in humanity's best interest. And I do think that it, on a very fundamental level, is taking some agency away and coloring it. Even frankly, in your example of the way that you're using to generate those posts, I'm going to maintain that part of the reasons they're so spicy is because the AI is giving you the kind of thing that the algorithm's going to respond to, which is a non-human force that is shaping what you're doing.
Okay. I mean, I feel a little bit.
You asked me, I give you an honest answer.
I'm here for it. I'm just owning that I feel a little bit prickly and defensive. And that's where the next sentence is coming from out of my mouth, that I would have to go and find that chat thread when I wrote that yin yoga post. I can remember exactly where I was on my loop that I like to do near my house. I have the memory or the sense, and I don't know why it matters to me, but like I somehow want to defend myself and say like those are 95% my words. Like it's not. And the question also becomes with the copywriter example, how much does it matter if it's our words, if we approve it? If I edit it, if I like a lot of what I'm writing with AI, I experience it as a kind of copy editor function and I have a little bit of dyslexia. I'm not good at I'm not good at the transition. I'm very verbal, but I'm not good at the transition from words to paper. I make a lot of mistakes. And so it's been a phenomenal tool for me when I have a newsletter in my head and then I can speak it and then I can see it that instant. So a lot of that for me, it feels like it's quite, there's a high fidelity from like what I'm wanting and what it's coming out. I am not starting prompts like, I want to make a viral post. Like, what can I say that's going to be provocative? You know what I mean? Although, yeah, I mean, on a deeper level, I think this whole question about whether to engage with the technology, you're right. I'm probably using a rather selfish metric where I'm saying I want to work less and spend more time with my kids who are now knocking on the door. Mm-hmm. I need 5 more minutes. Okay, wait, we're setting a timer. In 5 minutes, I'm going to come up and read you book before bed. Yeah? Shower. You do have to shower. Showers. Okay, showering is part of the deal.
But it's not, 5 minutes is not enough time for shower.
Okay, should we say 10 minutes?
8 minutes.
8 minutes, but no more interrupting. Love you. Okay, we have 8 minutes.
It's totally fitting, and it's going to start to make your case for you, isn't it?
Exactly. So, yes, I don't want to spend my life replying to emails and message boards. And I would rather engage with this technology, which, and I also have been public about talking about, I have a brother who's a computer scientist. He runs a team of programmers, and I have another brother who's a venture capitalist. And we've been meeting for over a year in our AI Explorers Club. That's just the 3 of us. And we have a Zoom once a month. And they've been feeding me, telling me, teaching me like the different, it was my brother who showed me a year ago how to train your own ChatGPT, right? Yeah. So I've just had like kind of early access to these, I call them my tech bros. My tech bros have been, kind of and they're very pro. One of them is super into AI safety, and one of them is super into it. The computer programmer for his job, he runs a team of programmers, and he's talking about like how, and he and I have this debate. He says that the average programmer who works for him now can do between 10 and 100x of the work that they were doing a few years ago. And so the question becomes for me, we call it Cam, his name is Cam, my brother. We talk about the kind of American model versus the European model, which of course is not, it's just a stereotype. But like his model, he lives in the States. His model is like, yeah, so if you can do 100x more work, imagine how much more productive you can be, and more and more and more and more and more. So you can squeeze more out of the people working for you, and like the work, the business can grow, and like
that's kind of the whole world. But yes, exactly. Maximize and scale up. Yeah.
Maximize, scale up, optimize. I'm calling it the American because I need a name. Maybe we can think of a better name. And I live in Austria, and my American family always laughs at me because like we have so many holidays. The kids are constantly, there's like no kindergarten this week because of this, because of that. There's so much downtime.
Yeah.
But my mentality is very much, I am interested in engaging with these technologies in order to serve the fact that I want to spend the afternoon at the swimming pool with my kids, and I want to go hiking, and I don't want to just dissolve into the computer and just be, like I want to go offline on the weekends. I want to, right? So I want to cook. I want to do all the things. I call it, in reference, in my Start Before You're Ready program, we talk a lot about artificial intelligence and biological intelligence. And I think yogis have spent decades cultivating our biological intelligence. And I think that we can offer this as a skill, as a service, within our families and our communities, and also for our clients. Like, this biological intelligence is becoming more rare and more precious.
I agree. I think that's where yoga serves us, is to, if you're calling it biological intelligence or somatic embodiment, or whatever the words that people are trying to use for it. But I'm going to say, I'm still going to hold my position that some of these technologies are digital intelligences. They're not biointelligent. And so our interaction with them and the way they affect us is something that definitely wants to be considered. Even in the way that you're describing of like, oh, am I using this to scale up and grow? Or am I using this to make my life easier? But I know, I
would say my life more human, my life more beautiful, my life more rich.
Fair. I guess there is just a gray area. I bring up my daughter because, I'm a bit of a writer, and she's in this like literature, this AP language class that she's in. So she does this writing, and she often, reads to me what she's written, and I give her feedback about it. So like one of our things that we've done together. And then, over the last 2 years or whatever, she uses the AI to do stuff. And then, one of her teachers used this new checkers, and it flagged her. It flagged her for using AI generated content. And I was kind of like privy to the process of her writing it. And so I actually wrote the teacher on her behalf. And I was like, I was around when she was writing it. And, I kind of want to vouch for her, and we had a back and forth about it. And it was just a really great area because she did use it in her process. And so where, she couldn't fully remember. You're like, I wanted 85%. Like there's just a little gray area there. And that's where my concern is. And, I don't think everybody has to be like me, because the truth is, if you don't use it, then 100% of it, where it came from. But if you do use it there, it opens up a little bit of a gray area.
And where I've come down as well is just taking a slightly larger timescale view. I think if we talk in 5 years, we're just not going to be having this conversation.
We're not going to have any choice.
I'm not saying that.
That's what you're saying. You're saying we don't have any choice, so you might as well get on top of it. And you know what? I can't really. It's a good argument that I don't have. The argument I'm going to make against it is not a pragmatic argument. It's like a spiritual argument about God and good and evil and which one we're choosing, which I don't really.
No. And there's a great argument which is embedded in what you're saying. I'll argue it for you. Is like, just because the smartest kid in school says, do you want to cheat on my homework? Do you want to copy my homework from me? AI is becoming the smartest kid in school. And if it can do your homework for you, is that what we want to choose every time? No. Like I sometimes also want to struggle through the math problems and do the homework myself. There is a different cognitive load. What I wanted to say to your, just thinking of your daughter and younger people, so all people, is I think there's a lot of focus right now in the conversation around AI as a binary, which I also believe is getting rapidly embedded into everything that we're doing. Even if we don't think we're using it, we're going to be using it. So, but separate from that, and the question about whether, it's leading people to make bad decisions or if it's unhealthy. And, I'm all for AI safety. I also believe that if we all were really hygienic about like waking up, going outside, moving our bodies, being around people, limiting our screen time, not having it in bed with us, like all the stuff we all already know. If we're actually, when I'm doing those things, like there's just not a lot of space to creep in around the edges in my nervous system for melancholy, I'll say, or for kind of like, it's like when I get up and meditate and then I do my strength training and then I do my journaling and then I make my coffee and empty my dishwasher and make my kids breakfast. Like I'm doing something for me. I'm moving, I'm sweating, I'm breathing, I'm meditating. Then I'm doing something of service for my family. Like I'm doing something hard, not hard, but like annoying. I empty the dishwasher every morning at 6:30 in the morning. It's like not just for me. It's like I just do this thing. I don't think about it. I just like, it's like getting into an ice bath. I just do it because I know it's good for me. The house is happier when there's an empty dishwasher. Like and then I make right. So, and then like I walk the kids to kindergarten. I'm outside. I say hello to the teacher. I say hello to the parent. Like when I get back from that hole from 5:30 until 8:30, like it is very hard for me to sink into a hole of darkness and despair after I've had that morning. Do you know what I mean? So I think we need to be a little bit more, timer. I got to go upstairs. We have to be, the last thing I'll say, and then we'll say goodbye. I've loved talking.
This has been great. I'm cognizant. Say what you want to say. I want to go deal with your kids.
I think I want us to take as the maximum amount of personal responsibility, right? So it's like, are we doing all of the things we know how to do to regulate our own nervous systems and then interacting in a very small doses with this artificial intelligence? Or am I waking up first thing and just dissolving into an algorithm? And
is the phone right next to you? And is it the first thing that you look at? Yes.
What am I doing to regulate my dopamine? Like, what am I doing? Wait, how am I feeding myself? How am I feeding? How am I like, my focus, one big focus right now is like, I want to be around human beings more.
I agree. I think if we can that's what I mean by the boundaries. Like if we're having more boundaries around our screen time, then I think we're going to be better at discerning the technologies. I don't know that we're always finding that balance, and the little one's here and you got to go. And thank you so much, Lizzie. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you. Let's stay in touch. I'm going to keep eyes on you and take some inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Big namaste to everyone.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.
And there you have it. What do we think? What are you thinking? I imagine there's probably a good spectrum of reactions and responses to that conversation. First, I just want to thank Lizzie for being so honest and transparent. I so appreciate that. She clearly wasn't like hiding anything or keeping any secrets. She's being very upfront. And again, as I told her, I think what she's doing is effective. And it is representing her viewpoint, as she said, being declarative as opposed to being provocative, although it's a fine line there. It could be declarative and provocative at the same time. But I guess the point is, are you being provocative just for provocative sake? Or are you being provocative because you're declaring your viewpoint? I get that. I think that's the right thing. Like choosing what you are about and being about that thing and not trying to please everybody, not trying to produce something that will appeal to the broadest range of people, to get the biggest tent, to grow it to the biggest scale, but to let it be just what you're really passionate about. And then the people who are into that can be into that. And then, as you said, if you're not, you can unfollow. I appreciate that. I really think that's probably the smartest way to handle the situation. Now, at the same time, what's making it effective is also that little bit of edge, the satire, slight bit of like trolling tone. Even when you're not directly trolling someone or something per se, although there is some of that, you're doing it in a kind of snarky way. In blogging, we used to do it. It was like very snarky and kind of, because it's punchy and it jumps out at you. Because that little bit of edge is what grabs the attention. And you see, that's where I'm feeling weird about people using language models to help generate that content, because that's what the AI language models are geared towards. That little bit of thing that will create some outrage, because outrage drives attention better than anything else. Now, again, I'm not trying to say that Lizzie's trying to create outrage. She's creating effective social media posts. And she is collaborating with Claude, with an AI language model. Now, that's the area that I really think is the most important part of the conversation we had today. That was what I was talking about with my daughter recently. And then just talking with Lizzie, it came up again, where there's a difference between using a language model as a research tool, where you're like looking things up or even having it create some summaries for you or something. There's a line between that, like using it for research, like a very eloquent search thing, and collaborating with it, where you're like, here's my ideas. Can you give me some more ideas, like 3 or 4 versions? And even though you're going to pick from them, you get to have the final editorial say. Some part of the generation of those ideas didn't come from you. Now, Lizzie was very honest and transparent. She said, I can say 95% of it was me. Okay, I'm going to take her at her word. I believe her. It was 95% my daughter writing that essay. But there's at least some percent, 5%, maybe more, where you can't really know. And I just look at it from my experience of making things and collaborating in my life. I've done that, where if you have a collaborator, it means relinquishing a certain amount of creative control over the end result. It isn't just you anymore. You have to let go of that creative control because other people are having input. And that's why sometimes collaborations get sticky, because it's not always clear, what's the percentage, how much of it was from this part of the collaboration, how much was that? So there is some percentage of what's happening when you're collaborating with an AI that isn't coming from you. It's coming from a unknown entity. And that unknown entity is absolutely smarter than we are at how to drive attention online. That's for sure. But my point in all of this is that I think we should be considering it. I don't think we should just be like, oh yeah, we got to start using AI. I think we need to think about how we're using AI and why we're using AI and the effects that using it has on what we're producing. And I think Lizzie's being honest about that. And she is trying stuff, that AI anatomy chatbot. I appreciate that she was transparent about it. Oh, there are issues, It came up with some weird answers, or people asked it things that it wasn't trained to be able to address, So I think it's an important area for us to be considering. And I just, at this point, have decided I'm not using it at all for nothing, not even for helping me write the emails or any of that stuff. Because if I don't use it at all, I can say with full surety that anything that's coming out is 100% me. Maybe that's for good or bad. I don't know, but I don't know. I'm kind of drawing a line right now for myself. I'm just not using it. Now, I know many people are. You can disagree with me. I'm very happy for you to reach out. And again, I'm just so happy to Lizzie for really engaging with me in such a wholehearted and, again, honest and transparent way. So kudos to Lizzie. There's links in the description. You can find her as well as the site with her mom. You want to get in on some of the gigs that her mom is still doing. Appreciated that clarification as well. So thanks so much to you, Lizzie. I really appreciate it. All right, what else? Let's see. Next week, we got some more tried and true material for this yoga listening audience. We will be returning back to discerning the history and philosophies of yoga, as well as some of the more esoteric concepts of energy and things. Like I was talking with Bernie a few weeks ago, we're gonna return there next week. So do stay tuned. And other than that, y'all, I almost don't want to open up any kettle of worms here, but it's late again. My wife had to go back to Virginia to be with her mom again. If you're a regular listener, you know I got all kinds of stuff going on. So like I was talking with Lizzie, I'm solo parenting again this week. I got to finish this. I got to go downstairs and make some lunches for tomorrow. I'm just trying to keep my wits about me, as I like to say. And looking at the news and seeing all this stuff happening and watching social media posts and seeing Sting starting some weird wellness cult. It's overwhelming at a certain point. And I find like the only, as I said earlier, sensible option is to like turn away from it at some point and just be with the simple beauty. You know, there is a simple beauty to the moment. There's a wonder and a glory. And to be with that is the challenge of our times. So, thank you, whoever you are, listening here all the way through to the end. I'm sending you love and fortitude. And what do you say, at the very least, we be kind. Let's be kind to ourselves. Let's be kind to others. And I will talk to you again soon. Please take care. Cheers.